Activated.
Good evening. Welcome to the September 7th Wyndham Raymond School District Board of Directors meeting. We are in the Town Council chambers. It is 6:33. Could I have a roll call, please, Mr. Superintendent?
You sure can. Kate Brooks.
Here.
Eric Colby.
Here.
Jenny Cummins. Jennifer Fleck. Diana Forslin.
Here.
Marge Gavoni.
Here.
Pete Hensler.
Here.
Don Dillon.
Here.
Anna Keeney.
Okay, could you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, there'll be one slight adjustment to the agenda. If you go to the executive session on the emergency management plan, we are going to return to our regular meeting prior to the vote. That will be the only change. So going back to the front, I don't see much public here, but if there's anybody from the public who would like to speak, please come up. Okay, seeing nobody, I'll close public input. First on the agenda is Mr. Chris Howell, who is the principal of the high school, and Danielle Domini, who is the principal of Manchester School, who are part of or lead Task Group 1. So if you could come up and update the board on the work completed by your group during the last school year.
Thanks. Which one is that would be?
And I do apologize because we did try to get you in before the school at the end of the school year, but we ran out of time. We ran out of time. I didn't think you would. Yes, I am.
Do you have another one?
Share. Yeah.
We've actually done a little more work since the update we would have given in the spring, so this is probably good timing.
Okay, so if you could just give us a little bit of background as to what is Task Group 1.
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for giving us the opportunity tonight to talk to the board and also share with our viewing public some work that has done over the past year and a half for a group called Task Group 1. For those of you who've been around the RSU for a while, I think we're now in our third or fourth iteration of a strategic plan. And Task Group 1 actually comes from Goal 1 of our last strategic plan, which was about proficiency-based instruction, student-centered instruction, and working on this transformation of the district from being students working through the system based on seat time to students working through the system based on proficiency. So Task Group 1 was created to help be a steering committee for that particular change, and it was formed roughly out of the last strategic plan. Its focus has been proficiency-based work, standards-based work district-wide, and it consists currently of a building administrator, and usually it's the principal, and then either one or two teacher leaders from each of the buildings. And so really that's kind of the makeup. We meet as needed. I think last year we had the opportunity to meet. Danielle and I co-chaired this probably 4 or 5 times as a Task Group 1. So in the 10 or 12 minutes that we have remaining tonight for our 15-minute update, we want to share with you some of our highlights from the 15-16 year, and then also talk to you about some work that we have planned for upcoming 16-17. So I don't know if you want to go ahead and...
I guess just to jump in, I think what might connect you back to the prior strategic plan was that the first iteration of what is now Task Group 1 might have been, if you remember, revolutionary learning. And at that point, we had heard what the community wanted in the strategic plan, and we were really trying to figure out what does that look like, where is that happening, and where are little pockets of it around here. And so that was the beginning of the idea. What it turned into over time, so sort of fast forward 5 years, and what we have here now is, now we kind of know what it is, and this is really the principles that we developed that are on the sort of the 8 principles are really not the what is it and where can we find it, but how can we do it? How can we become really a high-performing, learner-centered, proficiency-based educational system for all the students, K through adult? So this is, it looks so simple on paper, but it was a lot of work to get from the point A, the little seedling that the strategic plan planted. And now I think it's great to see full circle. I remember working on the strategic plan this time and seeing the same themes come up again from the community and just wanting more of that same. And we would say in those meetings, so I remember Kate would say, well, how do you do that? What does that look like? And we'd say, we're working on that. We'll show you with the update. And so this is sort of where we've come.
And if I can also just add to that, one of the driving forces behind one of our first tasks was creating the Principles of Student-Centered Proficiency-Based Instruction, which is a lovely pink color headed document
Saving ink.
in front of you. One of the reasons behind that is that as we started to make this transition, one of the things we kept hearing from staff and also discussion we had ourselves, what is this eventually going to look like in our classrooms, and what is this going to look like in our practice in the RSU? And so the 8 different principles that you see that are written there have not only been checked as far as going across and getting input district-wide, but in addition to that, we went through this entire process of creating this 8, and then when we got to the final product, we started looking at some research and some other documents coming from organizations that are working on either competency-based or proficiency-based, and the same 8 levels or the same 8 principles kept appearing in all the documents that they have. So we used this document this year as a springboard for a couple different activities that took place in the buildings this year. Number one is the steering committee, which is made up of about 15 or 16 different individuals, took this work and brought it back to each of the buildings so that they had the opportunity to read it over, have a chance to comment. We brought that feedback back to the larger group. In addition, we took what we see here for these 8 things and we sent out an infamous Zoomerang survey to each of the buildings, and of the 270 some odd teaching staff that we had, we received 208 responses, which I thought was great for our particular survey. And through that survey, staff identified for us what are the 2 areas as you look through these of professional development that you think that you need the most help with. And the areas that individuals looked at, if you look at bullet 3, which is really, if you could kind of melt this down or bring it down to one spot, teachers providing clear and measurable learning targets so students can articulate what they're learning, reflect, and understand how the learning can be applied to real life. So much of that is curriculum development, but then most of that is also how do I take standards and performance indicators that I've identified for my class and how do I make those real and transparent to students. And so in my practice. And then Danielle, if you want to talk about number 6.
I think it was very interesting when we looked at the surveys that every school prioritized number 6, every single school in the RSU. And it's a mouthful because you could probably break 6 down into 4 little standards within, but it really, it helps us to prioritize our professional development and how we, who we bring to spend time with us when we have professional development time, and we really used it. I think the staff really appreciate that we took their feedback, we built this with their input, and then flowing out the other end of it is, so now how are we going to move closer to these standards? And every school took each standard, and I don't know if we don't have these for everyone, and they're a work in progress, but every school unpacked every standard. So what does number 6 look like at a K-2 level is different than what it would look like at the high school level. So it's big work, but it's been very on point, and I think the timing is great with the new strategic plan, and they just seem like they're fitting together really well.
I think the other piece where the timing has really fit in well, and I know Christine has been before you a number of times, and I think she shared the new curriculum website. But I can speak for Wyndham High School, and I know Danielle's been involved heavily in this work at Manchester. We have spent a lot of time with standards, identifying graduation standards, identifying learning standards, and then translating that down to performance indicators and learning targets. We've done a lot of heavy lifting when it comes to curriculum work, And what this process also kind of brought to us is that we've done all this work that identifies what a student should know and be able to do, but now we really need to translate that into instruction and practice as far as what does it look like in the classroom. And then in addition to that, for me as a teacher, how do I instruct in a system where my focus is using standards and performance indicators and targets and making those things visible to students. So it's also shifted our work from external work of the classroom to now internal. What does instruction look like? And so we took the work that was done from each of the buildings. We brought that back and we developed what's in front of you right now, which is an action plan for professional development. And really the center point of that action plan is all about instruction. So if you look at our first PD goal there on the left-hand side, to identify and implement a common set of instructional practices that support proficiency-based instruction, multiple pathways for student authentic learning opportunities, and project and service-based learning. And this particular document with the other goals was shared with all of the administrators back at our retreat in, I think that was late June. To be useful information as each one of us sets our building plans for instruction. And I'll give you a specific example. At the high school, our staff is using the elements of proficiency-based instruction to be part of our goal setting. So that staff are identifying an area where they want to work on, particularly in their practice. They're going to be using that for goal setting. I know that's happening in other places in the district. In addition, our staff went through an I walkthrough training, which is going to be a peer observation process that we're going to be doing to look at what type of instruction is happening across the district, to again, inform what it is that we do as far as instructing to standards, but then also as part of our professional development plan. So that was the first goal that we set. The second goal being develop a common language and protocol for the development and implementation of assessments in the district. If I could kind of simplify that for everybody, is that when a staff member gives an assessment, it really should be measuring what they hoped it measured, so that we know whether or not a student's making progress. That's really what it's about. And so Christine has worked with our coaches to develop a protocol to take all of our assessments through that we're going to be using for whether it be standards or performance indicators. So making sure that common language is in place. So some buildings had a chance to pilot that this past year. But that's a major focus for us.
I think that's so important just to, because if you look at the multiple pathways piece of it and how important it is to let students help guide us to how they're going to best learn or demonstrate learning, we can't make 50 assessments for every way that a student might choose to meet this standard. And so it's really important for us to know how to build better assessments so that they're really measuring the attainment of the standard, not how they got there. And so that's what the protocol really helped us do. We worked with that last year, and it was great, and the teachers really liked it and developed some better assessments for everyone to use. And we're still using it in other content areas, but we did it in all the math standards last year.
And then the last goal that you see there, increase the capacity of staff in planning and sequencing of proficiency-based curriculum. One benefit that I think has been evident across the district is that there are greater conversations going on as far as what a student should know and be able to do, whether it be in a course or in a grade level. And curriculum can no longer be done in isolation, and I don't think teaching can be done in isolation either. And so one thing that we need to do better as a district, and that's part of what Christine has done with developing the website, we need to create and use tools that allow us to share what's happening in classrooms so that best practices are being shared across every classroom. I think back to when I sat in Christine's position, I think I calculated when we were just Wyndham, there were 2.8 million pathways that a kid could take based on the number of teachers that they had. We want to make sure that when a student receives a diploma from the RSU, that they are actually meeting all the standards that they need to meet and they're fully prepared to make a decision about what their next step's going to be. And part of that is how do we share all the materials that we're creating. So this professional development plan will be weaved into each of our building plans that we work on with Sandy in our own individual building goal setting. Task Group 1 will be coming together here in the very near future to look at what ways can we support buildings across the district to make sure that professional development opportunities for staff are what they need at this moment.
What is Atlas Professional Development /
Sure. I don't know, Kate, if you're familiar with this or not. There's a model for curriculum development called Understanding by Design, which basically takes your standard and or what your outcome is. Sometimes you might hear an essential question, and you take that essential question and then you build backward. What are the experiences that a student needs to have in order to be able to achieve that? Atlas is an online tool that allows you and I, if we're working on a unit, to build that together online. We can map it to the standard, we can map it to the performance indicator, and then if you create something that is outstanding, you go ahead and you upload it, and then you and I can now share that. So, for instance, if we're both teaching senior personal finance, we can build a course in Atlas, and you and I can share throughout the semester, and now we both have access to the materials that we're doing. So we are trying to work, and then the high school is the first one to really start using it wholesale, is that we're trying to get as much as we can online so that sharing can happen across classrooms. It also allows you to map to make sure that as students go through pathways, it allows them to make sure that kids are meeting or having opportunity to meet all standards.
This is a lot of work. It's pretty huge. I mean, I'm not on the inside like you guys are, but where I'm sitting, it sounds like an enormous amount of work. And my question is, how are we supporting teachers? And how are we providing the time? It almost feels like, honestly, like an AP course that they're taking while they're also teaching.
I think time is the key, and just going back to what every school is doing it in their own way, but this is the work.
Right.
And you have to do the other things you have to do and fit them in there, but we really are prioritizing this work. And so the last full PD day we had in the spring, that's all we did. So, build the dream unit that is a learner-centered, proficiency-based unit that you haven't had time to do. And it was great. And you came to some of the exhibitions. I think parents came to see some of the outcomes of those units. But it is about time, and it's also about finding local experts or regional experts that we can tap and bring them into.
The other thing I think that's important to kind of also share with the public is this isn't the first year we've been doing this. This is, I think, we're on year 4 or 5 in our journey through this process. If this had been presented to staff across the district 4 or 5 years ago, it would have seemed very, very foreign. But what you see on there for many are really what their next steps are and what they've identified in their work. The other thing, Kate, and I agree with you 100%, time is so valuable. And I think Mr. Prince hit the nail on the head when we were at opening day. I think that was last week. That we need to look at every single initiative that what we're doing and focus on truly what's important, and how we instruct our students in the classroom is the most important thing that we do. So not only to make sure that our teachers are fully equipped to be able to do that they have the materials and resources that they need, but I think a big thing is protecting time so that teachers have opportunity to have conversations about their practice and non-evaluative conversations.
So what does that look like in your building?
Sure.
We did
Go
it
ahead.
today.
Do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, it's fresh in my mind. We in the lower grades have the Wednesday time, and we really try to the number of people who email and say, I'd like to come and do this at your building. Can I do this at your building? Can I have just half an hour with your staff? We really, I would say, try to hold the line on that and prioritize the time for teachers to work on their own professional practice and development of these principles. Like I said, other things do have to happen, and we do that, but it's very conscious. And each school has a leadership team structure, and this is those decisions of how you use your team time or your department time are filtered through those leadership structures, keeping this right in front.
How do you assess your progress?
We do a couple things. One is staff feedback on whether or not they actually have the time. We've done something a little different this year with, we started out in August with training So really a quarter of the staff in how to facilitate meetings and run protocols to make sure that the time that we do have is used as efficiently as possible. We have in our building, third Thursdays are PLG time, and we are convening cross-curricular groups with a facilitator. To everyone is assigned a time where they're bringing a unit or some other piece of work that they're working on, and then get a chance to get some feedback. That does two things. One, it creates a stronger unit, but two, if you're in social studies and I'm in science, we never really get a chance to talk. So having those opportunities. But we have mapped out really the entire year and all of professional development time that it's focused on instruction. And we're trying to do as many of those nuts and bolts things that can be time suckers outside of those professional development opportunities. But we'll have PLGs meeting every chance we have a half day or every chance that we have a workshop day. But also focusing in on the assessment protocol on October 7th so that staff have a chance to sit and talk and work through some of those pieces. And then some of our staff are ready to do some instructional design using the standards that they're doing. Part of it is, we have the luxury at the high school of having a coach, where the two of us, we've sat down 3 or 4 times already this fall to map out the entire year, how we're going to use our time to make sure that every single minute is beneficial to staff. But I think a key part of this, and I think you'd hear it from all the principals in the district, is protecting that time from other things or other initiatives that want to take over when we really want to spend it on improving teaching practice.
It really speaks to, and we've talked about it over the years, an additional day of professional development. And given the heavy lifting that all of you are doing, I know there's a financial cost to it. There's also perhaps an overreaching benefit to the cost of having an additional day to get some of this work done for staff. It might be something that this board should consider, because what I'm hearing is time. Thank you.
How do you, not at the high school because we're the only high school, but how do you align your grades when you have, you have at your school 4th and 5th, and if you go up to Raymond, you have 4th and REF and 5th, because I always get very concerned that, this is what we do in this school. Oh, but by the way, this is what we do in this school. Mm-hmm. So how are you able to align so that, kind of like elementary school, they're all getting the same thing?
I think it's funny because I think the more that we really know what the standards are and what they mean, which we're getting way better at every year that we've had these and tweaked them and go back to them, we probably do fewer things the same, even within our own building maybe. So it's not that people have the exact same learning experiences, but where they get to in the end will be the same place. They'll be able to know and do these certain things that whatever the standards say. So I don't know that it matters that everything is the same.
No, I'm not looking at the same. What I'm saying is, like if you're in the 2nd grade in one school and you're in the 2nd grade, well, let's get to the end of it. If you're in the 8th grade in one school and the 8th grade in another, because after that they all go to you, are they all coming in with the same?
The standards are the same, and the indicators underneath them are the same. So, I would say, what do you think? I think we're getting closer to that than we were, because I think years ago we had the curriculum was the book that you bought, and the curriculum was driven by the teacher that taught it. Now the standards drive everything, so it's probably more similar than different.
Well, I think one of the transitional pieces that's happened is that Algebra 1's Algebra 1. It doesn't matter if you take it at Wyndham Middle School, Jordan Small, Wyndham High School. Algebra 1's Algebra 1. Here are the standards that are there. Here is what everyone should know and be able to do. Same thing with pre-algebra. And so those transitional for us, 7, 8, 9 transition years have had a chance to work together in identifying here's what kids should know. And then as they work their way through in math and those progressions, same thing goes with social studies. Social studies had a chance to meet and work on aligning those things to make sure that kids have these particular set of skills working their way up through the system. So I think, if anything, things have gotten a little bit tighter.
I think what is the next interesting idea that we've been coming across is now standards don't have to live at a certain grade level necessarily. So using jumper rope at the lower grades, we can pull standards into, we can pull third grade standards for a fifth grader who's working, say, below typical grade level in reading comprehension. But maybe for that even same student, we can pull a sixth grade standard in math if they happen to be strong at that. So it really, it's the proficiency is the key. They're linked to grade levels, and
so it becomes a PLP, a personal learning plan.
over time. And I think that's so funny that when you think back 5 or 6 or whatever number of years, but we wanted to just jump to writing those PLPs. And quickly along that process, we thought, wow, we're not ready. We have a lot of curriculum work and just mindset work, and I think we have those key pieces in place now. So now we're ready to move down the path a little further.
In line with what Kate said, Sandy, we probably should make note of that to have that discussion when the budget season comes around. Okay, thank you.
And if I also just could add here, the work that's been done, Task Group 1 and even the other task groups, it's definitely work that we want to do, but also I think it's important for the public to know and for the board to know is that sometimes this work seems like it's moving slow because it's not as much as we'd like to spend all of our time working on this and continuing to move this work forward. School does happen. Events do happen. There are things that we're dealing with, whether it be a crisis or some other piece going along in the building. So it's helpful to have plans like this to be able to refer to. But yes, sometimes the work feels like it's moving slow because sometimes it's only those half days or those other days or department time that we get a chance to continue to move that work forward. And in between, we still are servicing the 3,400 other students that are here on any given day and still making sure that our schools are safe and clean and all the other things that are supposed to happen in our schools are happening.
I think like Sandy says, go slow to go fast. So when I explained what we were doing a couple of years ago to a mentor of mine that I now she's a mentor, but at the time I had just met her as a professor, and I explained what we were taking on, and she said, "Oh, you're not just rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. You're talking about real deep reform." And I went, okay. You're right.
You did it.
Yeah. So it's a work in progress.
So at the end of the year, given this template, will you be able to have a final column that then you could present to us that said, this is what happened?
Yep.
Yeah.
This is the progress.
That indicators of progress column based upon what we've set. I think we could very easily work to present some progress on that. It's going to look a little bit different, I think, in each building, much like different departments in my building are different places, different buildings are in different places based upon support and I think in timelines. But no, I would welcome the opportunity
That would be helpful to me because
share.
I love this and I love the grid, but I want to know the end result. How did it work? Did it work? What was accomplished?
I think what would be fun, I don't know if you all would have time or if it would mesh with the school schedules, but if something, say in number 6, is really, that's the multiple pathways and personalized learning experiences and really the authentic application piece of that. If something's happening like that, we might be better as schools letting you know because maybe you could stop by and see what's happening. It's really interesting when the kids can show you and you can see the real. It's because it's a lot more engaging to do this kind of learning than everybody read this chapter and answer the questions at the end.
Just let us know.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Well, it is a lot of work, and thank you guys, because it takes a lot of your time to do this work, and to do this business. And I know that you guys didn't ask for this on paper, but you work too. And one of the questions that I thought about, that's one thing to develop, right? How do I really trust you guys to manage that? There's more of, like she said, the evidence. I see a lot of that, like they said, you can just demonstrate consistency through flexible period assessments. We have those assessments.
It probably would be as specific as asking any content area and any grade level. Like I could say, we have those well developed in some math units, not as well developed in language arts. That's literally what we spent today talking about, is how can we develop them around language arts so we're less program reliant, because we had a program, and it was a great program, it still is. But if we're going to make multiple pathways, then we have to have assessments that allow kids. So I would say it's, yes, there's some evidence of that, but not, you can't check that off a list. And it wouldn't be realistic to say by the end of this year that we would have that all done, would you say?
No.
No way.
It's a lot of work, but you guys
Yeah.
did design it.
Yeah.
But I think there's also another piece that we lose sight of, is that how do we look at opportunities, or how do we look at learning experiences that students have outside of the RSU, and how do we bring those back to, if you want to say credit or whatever you want to use for a student to be able to meet the standard, or even kids that are involved in alternate pathways to our vocational system, having them meet standards at our vocational schools. I mean, that's been a piece of work that they've been working on to identify what standards they're meeting, because if a kid is meeting a math standard over in a machines tools class, he doesn't need to meet that same standard over again at Wyndham High School. So part of that multiple pathway is making sure that we know what those opportunities are. Or if you have a student who takes an EMT class at SMCC for credit, what health standards might they be meeting, or might they be meeting some science standards? And so how do we bring those in? But much of this also is that as we get better with the standards and go through our assessments, what assessments can provide greater student voice and choice, and what ones are simply, you need to know how to be able to do this one specific function. And so wading through that process. But no, we'd love to bring some indicators of progress and some evidence, and I think every building principal would love to talk about their action plans that they're working on, and how that's going to translate to the professional work. I can speak for my building, and I know that Danielle's the same. Our focus on instruction this year, I'm super excited about, because honestly, we've been doing curriculum work for a long, long time, which is just identifying stuff, and our staff is ready to, what does that look like in my classroom? What does this look like in a course? And being able to talk with a colleague about how are we going to go ahead and implement that's pretty rejuvenating. So could be an exciting year for us. I'll give you products.
Yeah, we could bring samples.
So Chris, you said action plan, so each building has their own action plan. That'd be very interesting.
Part of our goal setting process with Mr. Prince.
Thank you. Pete?
I was just going to say, Danielle alluded to it, but one of the questions that I had that I've been curious about through this is, as we move towards common assessments, as we move towards common standards, I thought it was somewhat refreshing to hear you say that the kids aren't going to have the same. It's not necessary that they have the same exact experiences. Because I was wondering, from a teacher's perspective, what's the expectation? As there's all the sharing of the best practices, are they expected to adopt these, or are they just given the option? Here's, if you want to use it, this is what we're finding successful. I'm curious as to whether teachers still have the freedom to teach in a way that they're most comfortable with, because just as students all learn in different ways, I imagine, and actually, talking to people, teachers are more effective teaching in a style that they're comfortable with. Do they still have that freedom?
I think another way to look at it, is equity, and that depending upon which pathway I take to the RSU shouldn't exclude me from opportunities. So yes, I would absolutely hope that if a teacher has a group of students and can figure out a way to motivate and engage that group of students that may be very different but is still heading down that pathway to having those students meet the standard, that's exactly what we want to have going on in the RSU. And I think even as we develop scoring guides and rubrics, we've tried to make them as open and flexible. So for instance, in our English department, it doesn't matter what book that you use, so that we're not tied to a certain canon of books. It's, let's look and see what the interest is of students, but there's kind of an open-ended rubric that we can use that could apply to whatever you're choosing for a piece of literature that's going to engage a kid. But what it also prevents is, you're down this pathway, this is where you're kind of stuck. And that's tracking, and that's not what we're trying to do in this system. But it's that equity and that opportunity to learn regardless of where you go through the system.
I think where this pushes us all and teachers, and this is the part I love about it the best, but it's not easy, is that I think a little bit gone are the days where this is how I teach, take it or leave it. I'm a highly qualified teacher. I have my master's degree. I've been doing this for 20 years. This is how I do it. I think there's a stronger role here for what do the students want out of this experience. And even if they're kindergarten or 8th grade, 4th grade, that what we're asking teachers to do is really involve the students in helping to develop those, not the kids decide everything all the time, but just that's a real fundamental piece of this work. So I think it does push teachers a little bit to start checking in with the kids, and we've practiced some tools and protocols to really help embed that in classroom practice, and that's ongoing work too, because you say, yeah, I check in there, they look happy to me, but really it's a thumbs up. But really teaching teachers how to pull out of students what are their aptitudes, what are their strengths and weaknesses, and help develop that. So I think when teachers come and ask, can we do this thing? If we team this way, can we teach this way? Can we do this unit? I think we want to have a strong bias towards yes, because we want people to be happy. We want them to feel, engaged in the work. And then we say, and how does it support, these principles? So we're always filtering it back through this. Dawn?
Well, I thank you for all your hard work doing that. It's quite an accomplishment, and I do see a lot of progress. And I've seen the students present, and it seems like what they've learned in that unit stuck with them so much more, because they were kind of in control of how they presented the material, so they knew that material. Yeah. So it is really exciting. And, I'm glad I was able to do
I think that, this is the hardest work probably, but it's the fun. This is the fun stuff, like you said. Maybe, wordsmithing curriculum, not that fun. This is fun. And it's all really reflected in the excitement of the teachers when it's clicking, and the students for sure. So it's awesome. So we'll send invites. Anna, do you?
I just came in for the tail end of it, but I do have to say, I feel like I'm lucky. I have kids in elementary, but in high school as well, and it's just really just beautiful to do.
Thank you. Great. Okay, we're all set. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It took a little while to get you here, but it was worthwhile.
Worth the wait.
And we'll make sure that we put you on for the end of the year so we can see where we are. You may, they take it anyway. Look at that. Ken, you made note of that, right? Thank you. Okay. Next on the agenda will be Mr. Bill Hanson, the Director of Facilities, on the give us a brief review to the board on the Jordan Small Middle School roof replacement. Mr. Hanson, welcome.
Good evening. Did you all receive the kind of the summary that was sent? So in order to keep us on time rather than going over that, I think I'll ask if there's any questions to where we're at with that summary.
Yeah, well, yeah, just do it briefly because, well, I know Anna wasn't on the board. Okay, so you're all set? Yep. Okay, great.
Thank you.
Okay, I know, but for the benefit of the public who
Sure.
who might not go back quite that far, could you do it like very briefly, because I know it's been going on for a while and it is part of the capital plan.
Okay, great. So this summer we actually bid out the replacement of the roof. Yeah, we did it in phases, and we also did it as a firm bid over a 3-year period. As you can see from the results of the bid, you're talking a little over $500,000 to replace that inverted roof. I think it's considerably less than the budget number I'd given before. I'm happy to say that. So that's good news. I think we got favorable pricing. I'm pleased with that. So For those who aren't familiar, the Jordan Small school roof is an inverted membrane roof. So real quick, what that means is the membrane is on the bottom of the roof of the top of the roof. Then you actually have insulation and fabric and then stone on top of that. So if you can picture, it was like I'm gonna take a salad bowl and putting your salad in it, and then having a hole in the bowl and trying to find where the hole is. You have to get all the salad out of the way to find that. It's really kind of the way that roof is built up. On all of our other buildings, other than Jordan Small, we have a roof system with membranes on top. You can inspect it, look at seams, and check it out. So the new roof putting in it will be a fully adhered EPDM roof system, similar to the rest of the roofs we have in the district. So that's where we're at. What I'm asking for tonight is for you to give permission for the assistant superintendent to enter into a contract, which is contingent upon a few things. One is funding from the board. Is one of the things that would be, funding as far as school funding and approval of the school board. So the way I see this playing out is that we have some money in the capital reserve put towards this project that was funded from last year. Obviously, we're not going to replace the roof. I do not recommend we replace the roof in the fall and the winter. This would be start next end of the year when school gets done. We would start it, and my goal would be to really try to get phase 1 with the alternates and phase 2 done next summer. We get 2 out of the 3 because we didn't get 1 done this year because of the timing of the bid and the overall cost. We could choose to push that later, but I'd really recommend we don't because the pricing was based on 3 years, starting with this fiscal year, the following fiscal year, then the third fiscal year. So that would be a recommendation that we get phase 1 with the alternates and 2 done this next summer. I think it's very achievable, and then we would complete the project the following fiscal year. So it's contingent upon approval of the school budget. It would also be contingent upon a board vote to move forward. So right now, I'm asking for your approval for us to enter a contract with TECTA with those contingencies built into it. That when it would come to sometime this spring, as a budget is finalized and the funding is there, I come back to you and say I want to proceed with that element, and you would authorize us to move ahead with it.
Great. John, do you have any more to add to that? Okay.
And the pricing is firm for the length of the project, so that is the cost. Okay.
Do you think it takes 5 years?
Well, it's based on the 3-year time, so if we extend it out, there'd probably be escalation on top of that.
Okay.
But it was based on that. We did tell the vendors they had to price it out, and we chose the vendor we could use for the entire project as the low qualified bidder. Because the last thing you want to do is have vendor 1 do part of the roof, and vendor 2 do the next part, and vendor 3 do the third part. It would just be a nightmare as to who owns the issue and where you stopped, and so that was the way that we determined the low responsible bidder.
Phil, my memory is terrible for yesterday, but when we first discussed this, what was the cost then? I know this was a few years.
Well, yeah, the estimate was right around $750,000 was where I was at. And the good news is structurally, there's only one section right now we've identified that we have to put some further reinforcement under. There's a section right around the PE office area where we need to add some additional steel when we re-roof. And it's a requirement when you go to re-roof a school building that you do a structural evaluation. And based on the structural evaluation, we re-roof and we bring the insulation levels up to the energy code. There's some areas that we have to add some additional steel. So the good news is that it wasn't as extensive as I thought it might have been. Now, there is contingency in the project. In the totals I've given you, there's not a lot, but there is contingency there based on unknown conditions that we're likely to find. I'm hoping we don't spend any of it. And I'll keep you abreast of that as we move forward through emails to Dawn, to you, is that we do have to get into contingency funding, but I'm hopeful that won't happen.
Wait, the contingency is in this figures, or that would be on top of these figures?
If you look at the second page, the funding recommendations, that funding has contingency built into that. So if you take those numbers, add them up, it's going to be more than what the bid total was. Okay. Correct.
Okay. Thank you. So we approved this last budget, the $70,000.
Right, the 70,000 was voted to put into the capital reserve,
Right.
and I'm going to tell you that I firmly believe that that is a great way for us to fund these larger projects because it isn't focused on a fiscal year, and it allows us to do the work now. We can actually get contractors ready and start materials ordered. When we have a budget that's approved for the next year, we can already start that with some money in that. So we have 70,000 in that right now, which is
So I guess what I'm getting at, yes, and I love that mechanism as well. When I look at the okay, we have 70,000, and then I look at phase one, the first prop chart. How much I can't quite figure out how much it's going to cost.
if you go to the second page, what we'd have to budget for fiscal year 18 would be $286,650.
So we're not, I know, but I'm looking at the sequence, and it says phase one.
Yeah, and in my recommendations, we would do phase one with the alternates and phase two next
That's
summer.
90.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? So that's
Yeah,
90,000,
I
you're saying
can't-
we only have the 70.
That's what I'm trying to
Okay.
Thank you.
Correct.
Yes, I saw that.
Yes. So again, this is going to happen this summer, this next summer coming up. So my recommendation as we move forward with this is that we use the funds we have in the capital reserve, and we plan to fund that capital reserve an additional $286,650 to complete phases 1 and 2 next summer.
So you move the excess money into into 2018.
Well, it would be
So the bottom line is
right. So phase 1 and phase 2 would be next. It really gets completed next
Got it.
fiscal year in reality because
Mhm.
school being done the middle to the end of June, there's no way I could complete that project. It's really going to be probably an 6-8 week project to get it all done, those two elements done. So it will be completed. So what I want to do is enter into a contract that's contingent upon the approval of the school budget and school board final approval. So those the contract I'd like to write and have Dawn and Tech to America sign. Then we'll realize I'll be coming back to you probably sometime in May or June, shortly after the school budget is approved, for you to vote to proceed with phase 1 and 2. Then at that time you would have that money slated to go into that reserve fund. So I'm not asking you to spend money you don't have if that's your concern. No, I want to lock in the contract, and they understand the contingencies around public projects and public funding. But I like to have it inked up so we hold this pricing because I think that we'd see a pretty big increase if we break it up into separate phases or we cut it back, and I don't want to incur that additional cost. So
Yeah.
you'll have another vote on this to approve us to proceed with phase 1 and 2. Would be shortly in June after the budget is approved.
okay.
Just curious, if you were going to go with Tech to America, did they sign a performance bond? How do you do it?
The contract we'll put together will have a payment performance bond in it. Yeah.
Because it looks like you're heavy on one, right up to a 3, it's suspicious on 2. But that's what I
Yeah. Well, what's interesting to me is how close the numbers are when you look at a little over $500,000 job. There's somewhere around $40,000 in differential in there, which certainly is a lot of money. But on yeah, so and
Okay.
we did use just so you know, to make you a company as I do work with Walter Barstow, who Independent Roof Services does a lot of my roof specs for us. And then also the structural work was done by Lincoln Haney Engineering, who's been our structural engineer. So I've worked with them on this project. So that's kind of the backup of the horsepower behind what we've done, just so you know.
Okay, great. If there's no more questions, if I could have a motion.
I move to select a contractor for the Jordan Small School roof replacement. The low responsible bidder for the work is Tecta America, New England, LLC, Portland, Maine.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and we have a second. Are there any comments from the public? Seeing none, close that. Any comments from the board? I think we've had our discussion. Okay, all those in favor? It is unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
See you in a little bit, Bill.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. We have this evening one appointment. We're still trying to fill up those vacant positions. So if I could have a motion, please.
I move to approve Thomas Offit, a social studies teacher at Wyndham High School, who has a doctorate and a salary of $60,162. Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve for the 2016-17 school year, and a second. Any comments from the public? Seeing none. Any comments from the board? All those in favor? It is unanimous. Moving on to policy. We have one policy this evening. Kate, if you want to just give a brief. I know you're tired of looking at this one.
This is the second reading for the parent involvement in Title I program, and Christine Hessler, Director of Curriculum, recommended that we make some revisions so that we were more in compliance, specifically because we will be audited this year. And we looked it all over and tweaked it, and we're happy with it. And the 3 attachments, which are the individual elementary school handouts that are given to parents that we wanted to make sure are available on the web. So this is the second reading for that policy.
Okay, with no change, right?
No change.
First. Okay, great. Okay, if I could have a motion, please.
I move to approve the second reading of policy KBF, parent involvement in Title I program, and see attachments A, B, and C for each of the handouts.
Okay, we have a motion and second. All those in, is there anyone from the public who wants to speak on this? Seeing none, we all set with the board? Those attachments we did receive for the first reading, so we did get those previously. Okay, all those in favor? It is unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay. Next, I don't know, Mr. Davis, do you want to give some background here, please? On
Yes,
the
thank you.
proposed construction project of the Wyndham Middle School?
I would be happy to do so, and also just want to communicate to the public clearly that while this says proposed construction project, this is in its infancy stage. We've been using words like possible as opposed to proposed, but in working with the attorney, they felt that we needed to put in language that clearly indicated that there may be a project down the road that would be approved both by the board to go to the public and then the public after that in a subsequent referendum vote. So in any event, what's happening is we have worked a number of years to determine what would be necessary for the community in terms of the Wyndham Middle School, in the fact that it is currently in a situation where we have students that are now into the Field Allen site as a result of the core building being at capacity. And so that there's been a number of committees over years that have studied all of the facilities within the district, but this at this point in time is at least taking priority for the Wyndham community as we proceed. So what happens is in the state of Maine, one needs to go out to request for proposal for architectural engineering firms whenever state funds are involved. In this particular case, as has been communicated in the past, there won't be state funds forthcoming as we ranked relatively low across the state for the last iteration of funds for school construction, and there's no current dialogue and discussion at the legislative level to infuse more money. What I do know after talking to the state officials is that to the extent more money would become available, there would be a brand new rating cycle. We would anticipate that those communities that were not successful in funding would still be in a place where they would be looking for funds, and so we would be in pretty heavy competition. Having said all that, what we need is obviously an architect engineering firm to help us through the process, which would be, again, to the extent that the advisory committee advises the board and the board agrees that we should then take this to referendum potentially in June, then we need to have a design for the building that the public would be able to speak to, give their opinion on, and ultimately go to referendum to decide whether or not that's a site that they want to improve. So with that, I'm making a recommendation that we do continue on with PDT Architects. For the public, PDT has been with this district, I would say, close to 20 years, having done work for the Manchester School and the Wyndham High School. They've provided surveys and analysis of buildings across the district, including Raymond, even though the Raymond buildings were designed by different architects. So we're just in the position now where, in order to keep us on track for this project, that we need to engage the services of an architect, and it's our recommendation that we go with PDT Architects.
Perfect.
Okay.
Okay. So, if I could have a motion, please.
Move that the superintendent of schools be authorized to engage the firm PDT Architects, the architect, for the concept design of a proposed middle school project to be submitted to referendum vote, to execute and deliver a contract in the name of this district for that purpose, and that the contract provide for a professional service fee of $145,000 and be on such other terms not inconsistent herewith as the superintendent shall approve in consultation with the district's legal counsel.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Is there any comment from the public? Seeing none, I'll close this public comment. Any discussion or comment or questions from the board? Yes, please.
Yes, I could just have a clarification, $145,000 for that amount of money, because I think in one of your emails to us, down the road it would potentially be $2.2 million.
Thank you. That's
Can
correct.
you
Yes, I'd
flesh
be
that
happy
out
to.
for me,
Yep.
please?
So the attorney suggested that it would make way more sense for us to engage the services with this $145,000 design cost as opposed to approving the full sum of money, given the fact that it still is a possible proposed middle school and has not gone to public vote. So it wouldn't be wise legally to vote for the full contract, not knowing that you're actually going to proceed in a June referendum, and even more importantly, that the public may not vote the school. So what we're doing is we're voting basically for the design fees to get us to the place where the public will be fully informed about what the project would look like. If that's successful, then we'll be back to you to kind of round out the rest of the contract.
So the design would be firm with this $145,000.
It would, if you like, I can give you the major bullets of what will be done by the firm for that $145,000. Is that helpful? So site development, floor plans, exterior elevations, schematic wall sections, written description of mechanical system consideration, presentation boards of the drawings, and written descriptions. Asbestos and lead construction impact studies are a component. Planning board and zoning board presentation attended by this group for that. Space summaries, update and refinement of the mission statement, review of applicable federal, state, and local codes, description of all enclosed spaces. I won't go into all of what they are. Spatial relationship diagrams, cost estimate and implementation schedule, vehicular access, parking, pedestrian access to the building, principal site contours, relationship to other structures, landscape features, and quite a few additional services.
So maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but is the 145 for a conceptual design and the 2.2 million would be for the detailed planning and?
I think that's close, but I would say it's not going to be conceptual insofar as when the public votes, it really will be the building that you're going to get.
But yeah, I mean that's a huge difference. So I guess the difference in the 2.2 and the 145 is what?
Is what? Well, it's the ongoing work to actually develop the specifications for every minute detail of a new building.
Does that include construction management?
No, it does not include construction management. It does include a clerk of the works. Yeah. You know.
Well,
Yeah.
you've got the architectural rooms that have the electrical, over else to the civil, to the one of the pieces of
Is it safe to assume that, of that 100, I was just thinking of the high school when we went through that, but PDT went to the individual, went to the building, had
Several meetings, yeah.
several meetings with staff to get their input prior to coming up with drawings. I can't remember whether they met with public at school.
We made that available. Yes, it is. So they'll, and it's not just the teaching staff, but it's also, as you can imagine, food service,
Right.
Bill's area, things of that nature. I guess maybe this is a bit off topic, but just so the public also gets a more of a comfort level, I guess, with the process that we're engaging, is that when you do seek an RFP for architectural services, you're not to discuss fee with the potential architect. So the notion is that you get comfortable, if you will, from a philosophical standpoint with the architect that you're doing business with, then you discuss fee. But interestingly enough, in the state of Maine, the Bureau of General Services has already outlined what the fee schedule is. So no matter who you choose, you're getting the exact same fee schedule. So in this particular case, I believe that the board has been comfortable with the services of PDT for the sites that they've developed, and so that's why we're continuing.
And I think we also had a brief conversation on the fact that if we went to someone else, they'd have to start from scratch. I mean, because there's a lot of work been done by PDT already.
That's another very good point. Thank you for that. So, which is to say that even in talking to the law firm, these services normally would be in the realm of $200,000 to $240,000, not $145,000. But remember, we have spent probably $100,000 of the district's money to get us to this point, and then the further discount really would be accrued to the fact that the architectural firm that you're choosing has familiarity with the district. So that's a good point.
I just have to say, this past year, the facilities committee, and I know Bill can attest to this, really relied a lot on PDT for a lot of information. They were very instrumental in providing schematics sometimes too. We've had, in my opinion, a good experience with them at the high school. So based on that, I feel very comfortable going.
Thank you.
And I think we also have it set up for PDT to come to the
next meeting of the
next
advisory
meeting for the
committee.
advisory committee. So to try to bring them up to speed.
It's on the 21st.
Right. Okay, are we set? Okay, I know I had already closed public, but I'm going to reopen public. Again, if you want to.
Yes, I just have a
So
question.
you need to come up to the mic.
Oh, I'm sorry.
State your name, please.
Stephen Signor, Wyndham Eagle, and I just wanted to make
You
sure
mean
that
the paper, the Wyndham Eagle?
yes.
We have.
Sorry, you are not the eagle, right?
No, I am not. Bald eagle, maybe.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. I just want to make sure that I'm on the same page. So by approving this, does that mean that we're on track for a June 2017 referendum?
It means we're on track from a design standpoint, but
Okay.
we are not at all close to having the advisory committee recommend to the school board, who then has to determine whether or not they want to put it on a ballot. So all we're really doing is making sure that we have all of the data that's required for this body to make a decision as to whether or not to go to referendum.
Okay. All right.
And
Thank
we
you for
would have
clarifying that.
And we would have to do that by, I never remember
I
the
can't
backup.
back it up. I don't know if
I
it's...
never remember the backup time.
A number of days. I don't know if it's
I can't
90.
remember.
I can't remember.
But there is a time frame in that if we want to go in June. We have to make the decision prior to that. And I can't remember what that time
We
is.
can provide that to the board and to you.
Okay, and
That'll come
that was
later.
my next question. How could I obtain that information?
You happy to email me?
Like a second. Okay, sure. Yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
I'll see you after the meeting. Okay, great.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you. Okay, are we all set? Okay, all those in favor of contracting with PDT? It is unanimous. Okay. Okay. Next on the agenda is an executive session on our emergency management plan. We do have a shift here. The agenda calls for us to vote. While we are in there, we will not. We will return from our meeting and then vote. So if we could have a motion.
I move to enter into an executive session, discuss the emergency management plan, and then to return to a regular meeting.
All those in favor?
Second.
Oh, sorry. I know. You in favor? Oh.
Did you raise?
All those in favor? We are now in executive session.
Thank you, Donna.
All right, you're on.
Okay.
To approve the RSU 14 Wyndham Lehman School District's Emergency Management Plan for the 2016-2017 school year.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? I think we've already had our conversation. It is unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Hanson. Okay, if we could have a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Are there any questions, comments from anybody on the board? Okay, all those in favor? It is unanimous. Okay, committee reports. I don't think too many committees have met yet. I don't think finance has not. Facilities coming up.
I can give you the dates if it's helpful. I can give you the dates of the upcoming meetings if it's helpful.
If you would like.
I'm happy to.
Please.
Yeah.
Finance will be meeting on the 5th of October, 5 to 6:15 in the superintendent's conference room. The facilities advisory group's meeting on the 21st and 28th of this month between 3 and 5.
That's the Wyndham Middle School advisory.
Yes. Yep. And policy, I believe you scheduled for 9:15. I don't know what time frame that normally is. It varies. Okay. It's a surprise. Okay, thanks.
And then the other one is the facilities committee. Yeah, the 19th at 10 o'clock. And yeah, and I have not received the schedule yet. Have you? From the technical schools? Yeah, I haven't seen anything yet from Taz or Westport. There was a meeting. I think everybody got the minutes of it from the Wyndham Middle School Advisory Committee. And it was basically just going over general, okay, these are kind of like the ground rules, trying to bring everybody up to speed, which was a little difficult because they were some of them have not been involved in all the conversations. The good thing is one of the, Kim Hartwell was on our previous advisory committee that we had, which is good. So, and thank you, Michelle Jordan. Jeff Vermette was not able to make it. So the plan is to bring PDT into the next meeting, hopefully to bring some of these people up to snuff, because even those folks have been kind of like out of the loop from where we were the last time. And the other thing is we'll probably be looking back over, and it might be a good idea to have you come, I think, to one of the meetings with all your infographics. And I mean, that was like a great way to show where we were, to try to give them like a brief history. I think you can do it probably better than anybody. Yeah. Yeah. So that might be good. And I think it would probably help, because the meetings, there's two, one on the 21st and one on the 28th. Both of them are at 3 o'clock at central office. So if you could make one of those, and then you could just let Dawn or Drew know ahead of time. And that would help. So it was kind of like just a general get to figure out what's going on type of thing, and reminding them that they're not designing the building and exactly what their job was, and they're fine with that. And I think Drew is planning to come before us to give updates as it goes along. So that was it with that. There's nothing on the iBoat yet, right? You're going to check on that? Yeah. Can you tell Anna what the iBoat is? She wasn't here. Briefly.
It's a small boat that has the sailboat that has the GPS and they set it up. They usually have a lock for them to take it out for the waves. And then it goes. Hopefully it lands in another country, Westbrook and Scarborough, then France and Spain, and then they'll put it that.
Yeah.
So if somebody gets that, it says, when we look at it, it says, take you to the nearest school, and go to, there's a thumb drive in there that'll have information from the kids and with them, and then they can start corresponding. And then hopefully they'll reuse that and send it all out.
That's so cool.
Cool, huh?
And what school is doing that?
For the primary.
Yeah, you might want to, I don't know. I haven't heard anything going on down at the primary school on that. But
I don't know if it's a not either.
I mean, if they don't have a lot of energy or whatever behind this, we might want to consider taking it up to the academy.
I think we just started, right?
Huh?
Well, we had it last
They
year.
had it last year. They
And
had it the whole year.
It's
It's kind of like it's moving around. It's kind of like an orphan that nobody seems to want to adopt.
Made its way or been brought up to them.
I have no idea.
They're really loud now, so.
Well, my hope was that Jordan Middle and maybe the school can share the data, because you can.
How great if we could get them
It's really cool.
together.
But anyway, good idea. You can work with him.
Then be able to talk, okay.
I don't, again, on the committees, in December, I think I sent out, in December, we'll redo the committees again. So everybody kind of be thinking about what you might be interested in. We have to set up a meeting with you, Anna. And I don't think Adult Ed has had a meeting yet.
No, but I'm going to try to do that.
What, yes. Yeah, would you please, because Tom Nash had asked me before how you're doing. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I think that, Andy, do you have anything?
Just like to say that.
Appreciate the parents and staff for the great job of the opening the school. It's gone very smooth. I've only had one bus complaint. So things are really, really going well. And I think the schools look terrific, thanks to the custodians and our athletic program with close to 400 kiddos in programs, and that's going really strong. In your packet, you have the enrollment as of today. Just a quick peek. I didn't see any issues. I think we're really on target for the most part. So that's the good news, and that will keep changing in the coming weeks as the kids begin to move in, or we get a firm count on how many students went out of district, charter schools and stuff like that. So again, another great year, and I also would like to appreciate the work that public safety has done, both through the Wyndham Police and the Sheriff's Department. They've had a presence around the campus and the schools, and I think it makes a huge difference. So, that's about it.
Sandy, could you do me a favor, because I don't think we have it in our packet? Could you make sure we get electronically?
Oh, I will. I think you did that.
No.
Okay. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Okay, board roundtable. Eric.
Heather Perry and I, Superintendent Gorham, and I met over the summer, and we thought we'd give the first month a time for most of the other people, new superintendents. So we have a meeting scheduled, I think, the first week of October, just to kind of educate them on the past, what the SEA was, and do they have any interest to get it sort of reestablished. So I'll keep you posted.
I just enjoyed the middle school open house, so I wanted to say that went very well. Sixth grader, and she started cross country, so she's excited about that, and got to run all over the muddy trails, I think. But it was all good. And that's it.
Jenna?
October 15th.
Why is that not over, please?
His favorite part of this, October 15th, Wyndham Chamber Singers has a really big, exciting concert. It's a night of Queen. They actually have a Queen cover band coming in. I think his name is Sean Slaughter. And it's an entire night of Queen. It's going to be really amazing, but tickets are already on sale, and there's not a lot left. So grab them while you can. And also at the end of this month is the Raymond Elementary School Color Run. So a couple of big things going on. Great. Excellent. I just wanted to, we don't have a lot of viewers. I understand that. But for those that we do have, this November we have 2 seats that are available. We actually should have one that has right now no one running for. One of our board members is not going to rerun. So if there is anybody out there who knows of anyone, and this is a Wyndham seat, who would be interested in finding more out about being on the board, you can contact anybody that's here. It's I'd like to say it's just a nice Wednesday night out, but that's not quite the case. There's a little more involved than that. So give some thought to it. I've asked around. I have no takers.
Yeah, do we know what
By
the date is?
September 20, you know it. 24, 20. It's early. Yeah, it's not that. I think it's 24, something like that. But it's early on. Yes, first off, you'd have to go, you don't go to town hall for school board. If you do, they'll send you down to see Terry down at central office, which is right down the street. You take papers out, which means you have to say, I'm running for this 3-year seat. You have to get 25 signatures. They all have to be registered Wyndham voters. And they can explain the process to you, and you have only till, and I'm not sure the date, I think it's the 24th, it's early 20s, you have to have those papers back in. So if anybody's interested at all, does it go back to the clerk? It doesn't go back to Terry? Oh, that's right, with the advice they'll usually give you when you take the papers out is to get a few more signatures than 25, because you always have people who think they're registered and then they're not. So I think a lot of people have had that happen in the past. So if you know of anybody who would like to be part of this wonderful, terrific board, who has the best interest of all of our students at heart, please ask them to consider this. Anyway, that's all I got.
At the very least, it's a regular TV gig.
Yeah, yes, it really is. You know what? You can always, that's right. And if you have children, you can tell them they can watch you on TV. Yeah, I know. It's kind of like, oh, I want to, you guys are boring. I know. So, I guess, and that's it. So, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? Second. All those in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Folders.